I think that Pierre Poilievre has tremendous support from caucus, tremendous support from Canadians. We're really excited to see what's going to be coming. But at the end of the day, this is like, a little out of context things from a podcast is really not the biggest priority for Canadians.
I very much support the leader. I think he's doing a great job. He's a strong leader defending men and women in uniform, and I frankly will take no lessons from the Liberals on standing up for frontline officers.
There's a 5-alarm fire going on in this country with jobs, with inflation doubling its inflation way over target. So that's what we're going in to talk about today.
Well, today, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre addressed the backlash he's facing over accusations he made against the RCMP and the Trudeau government. Poilievre is denying that he said former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau should be jailed for alleged crimes. Have a listen. Here's Poilievre's initial remarks on the podcast, then the days following, and now what he is saying today.
Many of the scandals of the Trudeau era should have been involved jail time. I mean, Trudeau broke the criminal code when he took a free vacation from someone with whom he had government business.
Justin Trudeau violated Section 121 of the Criminal Code. The RCMP's own documents revealed that there were grounds to believe that fraud had happened.
Did you make a mistake in suggesting that Prime Minister Trudeau should have gone to jail?
That's not what I said, if you look at my remarks. I'll tell you what I said. I was asked about the scandals of the last 10 years of the Liberal government. And what would I do if such scandals and corruption were to happen when I become Prime Minister? And I said I would have zero tolerance for corruption. Nobody is above the law.
So while Poilievre's remarks are sowing some doubt within caucus, as Radio Canada is reporting, they're also drawing criticism from Tories outside Parliament. Today, a second Harper-era Conservative has written an op-ed in the Toronto Star raising concerns about Poilievre's leadership. Andrew Dougal was Communications Director to Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and he's worried Poilievre is speaking to the wrong audience. This after Dimitri Soudis said some critical things last week in the Toronto Star as well. We're going to start there with the power panel. Amanda Alvaro is a former Liberal Party communications strategist. Jordan Leiknitz is a former NDP strategist. And here with me in the studio, Tim Powers is a former strategist for Conservative parties, and Sherelle Evelyn is the managing editor of the Hill Times. It's good to see you all. Sherelle, when I repeated, I guess, the question that Tonda McCharles, I think it was, asked in the scrum today, you're insinuating Justin Trudeau should go to jail. I asked Melissa Lansman about this. She said that was my interpretation of the remarks. How should we interpret what Pierre Poilievre said? Because I can't draw any other conclusion.
I mean, I'm finding it difficult to do the same. It's, words generally mean things. And if you say that somebody has broken specific sections of the criminal code, and you also say that there should be jail time for actions involved in these instances, it's hard to see where one doesn't immediately lead to the other. Did he say, has he been on TV and said, lock him up? No, he has not. So there's, I suppose, some shelter in there, but it is I feel like it's a pretty linear line. And of course, any Conservative is going to be, making those defenses and following the memo from on high about what it was that Pierre Poilievre maybe should have said and is now saying, but he was on tape saying certain things, and he has said in the past that, sometimes he gets his passion get in the way of whatever it is he's trying to say, what message he's trying to get across. Yeah. And I think to a degree it did here. Yes, he looked very relaxed when he said it. That's not to say he didn't mean it when it came out of his mouth, and now maybe hindsight's always 20/20.
So Tim, we've seen the clarifications that it became solely about discontent with Brenda Lucki, and then the leader addressed it today. My colleague Laurence Martin spoke to 4 MPs who say they now doubt whether he's learned the lesson of the election. I mean, where do you think this leaves the leader? Where do you think the public views what's happening here?
I wrote about this in Sherelle's paper. Until Pierre Poilievre gets rid of his obsession with Justin Trudeau and everything being about Justin Trudeau, it may be Justin Trudeau who invariably sinks him at the moment. I don't think that's the immediate jeopardy, but certainly, David, this is the most agonized, and it's not severely agonized yet, but it's not insignificant, that Conservatives have been since Pierre Poilievre has been leader. You know. They're being trafficked here today, whether they turn out to be true or not, rumors of floor crossing and the like. It's the first time I've heard that under Pierre Poilievre's leadership. Whether it happens or not, who knows? But you know, the Liberals got rid of Justin Trudeau, or Justin Trudeau stepped away. Canadians have forgotten Justin Trudeau. The only one who's embracing Justin Trudeau at the moment is Katy Perry. Perhaps Pierre Poilievre. No, but Pierre Poilievre, I think Amanda can speak to this better, but I think when Amanda interviewed Jenny Byrne, when she was on Amanda's podcast, she spoke about this habitual behavior. And for whatever reason, I mean, we all have people like this in our lives. For Pierre, the focus has been Justin Trudeau, Trudeau, Justin Trudeau. And he still can't cast him aside. And that's hurting the party right now, because those comments, with great respect to Melissa, and I have a ton of admiration for her, weren't about Brendan Lucky. They were about Justin Trudeau. And until he puts to bed whatever it is, whatever concerns, frustrations he has with Justin Trudeau, this is going to be a problem.
Yeah, and they've expanded things, right? Like Portapic was a terrible tragedy, but it was a policing failure. That's not a Liberal scandal. You know what I mean? That was an operational
failure. And there's, to your point, there's just, look, there's a litany of things you can complain about RCMP operations. For sure there are, as you can in any organization. But when you seek to be the Prime Minister of Canada, going after the head of one of Canada's institutions, even though it may be a troubled institution and has been, just doesn't send vibes of comfort to the broad public.
Amanda, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, Pierre Poilievre spent a year dominating the news agenda. He's kind of struggled to do that since Mark Carney took over. He's done it in the past week, but not in an intentional way, right? I mean, where do you think things are right now?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Tim said. I think it's a weird and unhealthy obsession with Mr. Trudeau. I feel like somebody needs to shake him out of this time warp. It is not 2023. It is not 2024. It is the back half of 2025, and Mr. Trudeau is no longer Prime Minister. That ship has sailed. Like, it's literally sailed. He's on a boat with Katy Perry. It has sailed. He has moved on, and Mr. Poilievre needs to move on too. Not just because being a serial name caller is not a winning strategy, but because where else do we hear these sort of baseless claims that are not backed by evidence, that are presented as fact? This is a Trump playbook. It's a playbook that they used in the past. Some may say that they used it successfully, but it's a playbook that did not win them the last election. It is a losing strategy now. Dimitri Sotis said recently, this is somebody who doesn't look like he's auditioning to be the next prime minister. This is somebody who looks like they're addicted to opposition. And I agree. So when he goes to present himself in front of the leadership review, he has to convince Conservative members that he's not just a serial name caller, that he has a vision for the country, that he's ready to solve problems, real problems that the country is facing. But how is he going to do that when he keeps regurgitating, it's like Groundhog Day, this one track about Trudeau and the lines that he used that were at once successful, but ultimately it was a losing strategy. And the last thing I'll say is that Tim brought up, the podcast, the interview with Jenny Byrne, and there was something that a big takeaway for me, and that was the lack of accountability. Oh, the Conservative Party didn't lose the election. The NDP collapsed. No, you lost 20 points. You had it and you lost it. Whatever worked then is not working now.
Yeah, the NDP collapse explains some things. It doesn't explain their underperformance in Atlantic Canada, because there was really no NDP vote to collapse out there. You know, the Liberals were done, and then suddenly they weren't, right? So that we've talked enough about the election in the months since then. But, Jordan, I wonder about this because the criticism of Dimitri Sotis and people like Andrew McDougall, you do see other people pushing back saying this is where the young Conservative movement is, though, and this is where the Conservative base is, and that, people who criticize it just don't understand the world in which Pierre Poilievre lives and works, and the people who gave him the 41% or whatever it was in the election. I mean, does that work, or is that just it raises your floor but lowers your ceiling at the same time?
Well, that's just the challenge. There's no way that these types of arguments, which are energizing to the Conservative base, are going to be the ones that win over mainstream Canadians. And in fact, I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Poilievre and the team immediately around him have not learned from the election. because this isn't even this is just the most recent example of him engaging in Trumpy behavior. We also saw him out railing against DEI. He was out casting aspersions on the sentencing of the convoy leaders recently. So this is a deliberate choice to go back to the well of things that I think, number one, I think he enjoys. I think he feels very comfortable on these topics because they align with his worldview. But also they're things that do get him applause and plaudits from his base. But they provide a real hard ceiling to his support. And so the idea that somehow after the election there was going to be some change, that some lessons were going to be learned, seems to have gone out the window with the Conservative Party. And you can see that by the comments of his members, even as you saw them going into scrums today, they know these topics are not where Canadians are at. They know that Canadians are worried about affordability, they're worried about jobs, they're worried about the trade war, but they're not waking up thinking about whether Justin Trudeau should have been in jail.
Yeah, and Cheryl, it's interesting. Well, some might be. You know, there are. We've seen enough of the flags and the conspiracy stuff to know there is a loud segment of the population that believes that this is a corrupt, venal place and everybody should be thrown in jail. So you do have to deal with that. But Cheryl, I was struck by the fact that 4 or 5 members of the caucus spoke to Laurence Martin at Radio Canada and say there's doubt creeping in. A year ago at this time, there wasn't doubt. They were going to win. They were going to win big. It was only a matter of time. And now it's not a revolt. It's not at a critical mass, but there is a fracture in the mental confidence, at least in the leader, it seems.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, you had, as you said, last year, this time, they couldn't lose. It didn't matter what he did or what he said, how many apples he ate. They were going to form government. Mm-hmm. Now that there has been, Poilievre has been, people thought, humbled. He lost his own seat that he'd held a long time in Carleton. He had to go run in a by-election. He didn't form government like everybody expected him to. There was that period of reflecting and listening and learning over the summer and before the by-election. Everybody thought, okay, we'll give him a shot. Mm-hmm. He still managed to pull this party to a place that we hadn't been before and give us support that we hadn't seen before in previous elections. So we'll give him a shot to see what we come back with. Now he's back in the House. Everybody thought, hey, fresh start, let's go. It's kind of back to the well. He's gone back to the well. Doesn't seem to have learned these lessons that everybody thought were coming. So I think really one of the only real reasons that we haven't seen more people coming forward is, yes, you have what's happened in the past and the previous election and the election result and the vote percentage that the Conservatives got and the fact that they picked up seats in new areas, all of that stuff. But there's also nobody waiting in the wings clearly as Poilievre was to take over as leader, right? And that would generate a whole different fight. And I don't know if that's something everybody's willing to have right now until things look way more untenable than they are, because they do have time, right? Like there's not. Unless everybody votes against the budget, there isn't an election.
Yes, I mean we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Tim, just to give you the final thoughts on this, I mean he is still Mr. Poilievre enormously popular within the party ranks. And Laurence was clear to make this point in her reporting that even if people are a little bit rattled and shaken in their confidence, there is no revolt, there is no wide-scale push. It's just it is interesting that the guy who just controlled everything lost control of it this week, and some people are a little bit worried about it.
Yeah, and I think that's entirely right. Look, he does control the party. He controls the vast majority of the caucus. But that too eventually runs out if you don't find a way to evolve where it is you're going. Crosby used to have a great quote, "There goes the people, I must follow them." It was from a French philosopher originally. It's fine to follow the tracks of anger.
I must follow them for I am their leader, is the end of that quote. Yeah.
Follow the tracks of anger, follow the frustration at Trudeau, a lot of this all goes back 3-4 years to the pandemic. And that's where a lot of this where the people correlated under Pierre. And he's harvested them well. He's responded to them well. Yes, there are a lot of young people who are angry, who like the voice he gives them. But ultimately, David, the job of a leader is to turn that anger into opportunity and take people to a place where solutions are found. And I think that's the other 5 or 6% that people are looking to see. Does Pierre Poilievre have that? Because maybe they could vote for him.
Let's bring back our front bench on this. Sharon Carr, Kevin Deagle, Jamie Allerton, and Sebastian Skamsky. Jamie, I'll start with you. You hear the on-the-record denials. We still support the leader. There's anonymous MPs telling Radio Canada that this is, making them think twice about their support, their initial support for Poilievre. How big of a deal do you think this is?
I don't think it's an incredibly big deal. What I do think it is, though, is a massive distraction. I think if actions speak louder than words, when you listen to all the caucus members there, they're all trying to talk about affordability issues, the seriousness of this upcoming budget, and not trying to relitigate the issues. I think when you listen to what Pierre Poilievre had to say on that podcast, he sometimes has a habit of letting his rhetorical flourish and hyperbole get the better of him in those interviews and kind of takes positions to their logical conclusion. And I think at any time you're looking backwards at Justin Trudeau and not forward to Mark Carney and holding this government to account, it's probably not going to do him a lot of good. And so I think that's why you've seen Pierre Poilievre out, kind of relitigating it with more precision of what he meant to clarify those remarks, but ultimately going to be talking about the budget. In the grander scheme of things, I think the vast majority of that caucus is firmly behind Pierre Poilievre. The vast majority of Conservative members are behind Pierre Poilievre. And I don't think his leadership's in jeopardy. He'll go to have the review out of the convention and get another kick at the can to face Mark Carney in the next election.
Just jumping off Jamie's point, Kevin, I thought it was interesting that every single one of those MPs definitely were like, hey, there's bigger fish to fry. We're focused on other things. Clearly, trying to send the message that they're moving on. Whereas I listened to the back and forth between reporters and Mr. Poilievre today, and he was certainly still dug in on his position, right? It didn't even sound really like the statement of contrition from a few days ago. What does that say to you?
This is a bit of a head scratcher to me, to be completely honest. I think Canadians recognize that we are at this pivotal moment where we need to fight back against U.S. tariffs. We need to respond to geopolitical tensions. There are so many critical issues here. And on the one hand, we have Prime Minister Carney, who is ready and responding to these important issues. And Canadians understand that, and they see that work, and they will see more of that tonight. But then on the other hand, you have someone who is so ready and content and willing to fight the last war against the last opponent. There seems to be this unique obsession with the former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, that he doesn't seem to be ready to let go of. And I think that will have negative impacts for him and the party.
Seb, do you think this has had an impact? And I know that I'm sure you're thrilled with the anonymous people coming forward to talk about their displeasure. What are your thoughts on how this is shaking down?
Well, isn't this the perfect recipe for an Ottawa bubble story? You have some out-of-context remarks. You have the Liberal media frothing at the mouth with the commentariat class, including some faux conservatives who are jumping at the bit to try to make something out of nothing. Here's the bottom line. Canadians expect there to be accountability for corrupt actions. Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative Party, has been saying that since the time he became leader. They have been litigating that at committees, and that is in line with what he has been saying. And so now there's a desire and a great interest on the part of the Liberals to have this obfuscate all of the issues and problems that they are propagating in this country. Again, last week we talked about Stellantis, 3,000 jobs. Yesterday, General Motors, another factory closing. Today, another one in Quebec, where 300 more jobs have been lost. I think Canadians want to focus on what matters to them. Employment is number one. Being able to afford food, probably number two. And somewhere down the line is also corruption and not wanting to have their tax dollars go into the pockets of Liberals and their friends. So that's what I'll say on that. I'm sure Sharon will have some more other thoughts.
I'll quickly throw it over to Sharon. I think all that is true, that Canadians care about all that. They also care about corruption, and they did in the case of SNC. I think they also care about character. And I remember very clearly for 2 years covering SNC every night, and the number of Liberals who told me told me often on air, this is an Ottawa bubble story. Stop focusing on it. I will just say, as a small point of irony, we're numerous. Sharon, your response to Sebastian.
Sebastian is right. Canadians do care about the things that matter to them. But you know who doesn't? Pierre Poilievre, because all he is obsessed with is Justin Trudeau, who is on a yacht somewhere else and definitely not thinking about him. So it's not out of context. He's a one-trick pony where all he can do is talk about Justin Trudeau and the last 10 years. He is unable to look at what the future holds. And again, if you saw his presser earlier today where he was adversarial, aggressive, making claims against an institution that is highly respected, one that protects us against service people, the men and women who serve us, to make claims of corruption and then kind of try to backpedal it, it's not helping him. He has dug himself a very deep hole, and you hear it from a lot of Conservative members. And again, yes, some of them are anonymous, some of them not so in certain circles, but this is who he is. He is divisive. If the issues actually matter, he wouldn't be going on some random podcast where he's talking about things that don't matter. He should be focusing on the future. And you know what? This is the leader he is. He is a divisive man, excellent communicator, but very divisive, and is just focusing on things that don't matter to Canadians.
To be fair, like, he was asked in that podcast, Jamie, like specifically, and I think in the clip we played, he talked about the way in which the question was framed to him. And to also be fair, like, I've talked to as many Conservatives as I can. Overwhelmingly, they're not telling me behind the scenes, yeah, we want him gone. Like, overwhelmingly, they're willing, like you said, to give him another chance.
Yeah, and I think what people are looking for is just a demonstration that Pierre Poilievre can learn some of the lessons over the past year and demonstrate growth as a leader, which would ultimately benefit the party as a whole. I think when you listen to the exchange we just heard from Sebastian and Sharon, like, it's very much Ottawa political rancor as normal. But every day that Conservatives are having to talk about what Pierre Poilievre said on a podcast that makes it sound like something Donald Trump would say, that's just going to fundamentally be a bad day for Conservatives. And the specifics of what actually matters on the issue kind of don't matter, because what's going to cut through is the noise that Pierre Poilievre says Justin Trudeau should be in jail and everyone thinks of Hillary Clinton, lock her up. And so the problem there is on that comparison. It might not be fair, but I don't think, if you look at all the time that Pierre Poilievre has in a day, every 15 minutes he has to spend relitigating and providing nuance to try and clear the air on this issue, is 15 minutes he's not holding the government to account, and that's just not a good day for Conservatives. And so I think he's going to have to be a little more selective as to how he does this going forward. Being right in every single argument and every single moment is not necessarily the recipe for winning the next election.
It is the recipe for a happy marriage, as my husband will attest to. I've got 30 seconds left. Got to cut through the seriousness. The last 30 seconds go to you, Kevin.
I don't know how to follow that up, Vashi. I think that, to me, it's just, this speaks to a level of seriousness. On one hand, we have Prime Minister Carney, former governor of the Bank of Canada, former governor of the Bank of England, Brookfield, et cetera, et cetera. He is forwarding economic plans. He is in the trenches. He is in the arena pushing these solutions. And Canadians recognize that he's been in power for 6 months. This will take time. These solutions, these changes will take time. And then on the other hand, you have Pierre Poilievre litigating old issues.
So how will Canadians and Conservatives see all of this, these explanations for his comments? That's the first topic for our daily power rankings. I'm joined today by Nigan Sinclair, a columnist for the Winnipeg Free Press. The Globe and Mail's Laura Stone is here, and so is the CBC's Jason Markusoff. Great to see you all. Nigan, let's start with you. What is your take on those comments that, according to our colleagues at Radio Canada, have gotten the Conservative leader in a little bit of trouble with some of his caucus members?
Just a few minutes before, on that same podcast, which if people get a chance to listen to, is a very interesting sort of search into what Poilievre sees both as their last election, but also the movement forward for him as leader in the Conservative Party. He says that there is a series of distinct philosophical groupings in the Conservative Party. There's law and order conservatives, libertarians, fiscal conservatives, and social conservatives. He says, I sort of look at what is the Venn diagram, what overlaps with all of them, and then address those people on those multitude of sort of issues. I wonder where anti-police fits on there. It may fit in perhaps a libertarian position, but certainly not in some of the other ones. I think that what we're seeing here is the internet has a very wide swath. It also has a long memory. And it is kind of curious that Poilievre would be coming out so obsessed with Justin Trudeau that he'd be still talking about, even though he's off on a yacht doing other various things we can talk about elsewhere. He's not the prime minister, and so Poilievre's continual obsession with Trudeau certainly says that he is far more interested, perhaps, in talking about the past and not maybe the present of the Liberal Party.
Laurie, it's interesting because, Mr. Poilievre was asked, was it a mistake to insinuate Justin Trudeau should go to jail? And he says, well, I didn't do that. But then you listen to that clip and then other clips where he says, well, Justin Trudeau clearly broke Section 121 of the Criminal Code. And it sure sounds like it. I mean, what do you make of this whole controversy?
I think it's the definition of damage control. And now this is the third iteration of what Mr. Poilievre said. He has the initial comments on the podcast that were caught on video, and they're up on YouTube for everyone to see. Then we had his office clarifying that Mr. Poilievre was actually referring specifically to former Commissioner Brenda Lucki, who the Conservatives had said should be fired. And now we have Mr. Poilievre saying he spoke out broadly against corruption. And this is kind of a prime example of don't trust your lying eyes and ears, right? I mean, he's trying to convince Canadians they haven't seen what they've seen. And I think, this is a bit of a niche podcast. Obviously, you can find YouTube videos anywhere, but he's obviously trying to spin this into something else because this has hurt him, I think, in the eyes of regular people, maybe not so much the Conservative base who is, feverishly against Justin Trudeau and everything that he stood for and maybe likes these kinds of comments. I think kind of regular people watching this are just shaking their head and wondering why he's talking like this. So clearly he's trying to turn the page, right? I mean, he's trying to move on, and we'll see how much damage these types of comments have inflicted on either his leadership or his potential to win the next general election.
Yeah, Jason, it's a rare moment since Pierre Poilievre became leader of the party where he is struggling to set and shape the news agenda. But that's where he's been. I mean, he's setting it, but not intentionally this week.
Yeah, this is definitely not the sort of thing he wants to talk about. It's, I think back to that period, that video he put out after the election, where there he seemed like he wanted to turn the page on some of the things he had said in the past and some of the approaches he said in the past. But this podcast, these comments brought him right back to it. And the way he defends himself on this, trying to dig in, saying, I didn't say what you heard I said when I said people should be jailed and Trudeau should have been charged but shouldn't, criminally charged. I didn't mean that he should wind up in jail after being criminally charged. Like it's very difficult trying stuff to try to have to justify. And so it's not terribly surprising that you're seeing comments like Dimitri Soudas's in Toronto Star and now Andrew McDougall's in Toronto Star. I guess it'll be different when those columns about his leadership turn up in the National Post. We're not there yet, but we are at the point where there are MPs in his own caucus willing to have anonymous quotes in a Radio Canada story by our colleague Laurence Martin about that he's a problem, and those we've seen where these problems go, and they tend not to be stuffed back in the hole too fast. These challenges tend to grow, especially if he's not going to have much contrition.
Yeah, when losing the election and losing your seat, you're destabilized and you reflect and talk about change. But now that you're back and things are back to normal, it's sort of reverting back to the way things were. So we'll see if that continues in the days ahead.
So where does this leave the Conservative leader? Let's bring everyone back. Chantal, Andrew, and Althea. Chantal, I'll start with you. We talked about this last week on the third block because it seemed like it was maybe a one-day story. We're a week later, and he's still struggling with it. What do you make of it?
That it will remain a major error in judgment, and the fact that he now is trying to put a lot of smoke around what he said, which is something he hasn't done very often in the past, shows that it landed very badly, not just with the public in general, but with the Conservative caucus and with many Conservatives. Let me give you an example of how bad a week that was. There was one day on National News Watch, the online, where 5 stories were about Pierre Poilievre, and all of them were negative. I don't think he's ever been the target of such a storm from all corners since he became leader.
Yeah, a storm of that he created, Althea. Like he didn't have to go down that road, and he didn't have to choose that kind of language.
he chose to do that interview. He chose to answer that question the way he did. He is trying, it's true, he did not say Justin Trudeau should be jailed, period. No. But he did say if the RCMP had been doing its job and not covering up for him, then he would have been criminally charged. And he said many of the scandals of the Trudeau era should have involved jail time. And then he went on to say that, frankly, the leadership of the RCMP is just despicable. So that unleashed a flurry of commentary, including from Dimitri Soudis, Stephen Harper's former director of communications, and a bunch of other Conservatives came out of the woodwork, and a lot of MPs who actually support Pierre Poilievre and would probably put themselves, on the right side of the Conservative Party, were really just annoyed because this is the leader who told them at the very beginning of the fall sitting that they should focus on the things that unite them. Talk about crime, talk about jobs, talk about the economy, talk about affordability. What is he doing? Talking about something that is not any of those things. So this is like the first time really that there are people within caucus who are like, maybe there is something to this whole, he's not ready to be prime minister yet. There are, of course, we talked also about the rumors of the potential floor crossers. There's a lot of unhappy people who feel like now they're just flailing around. Mr. Poilievre is struggling with his own messaging. He was trying to say that it's not all the entire leadership of the RCMP. He really just meant Brenda Lucki. That was earlier in the week. Now he's saying he never said those words when actually everybody can see that he actually did say those words. And it's interesting to, I don't know, what will tomorrow's line be?
Yeah, and they were trying to start the week with this letter to the Prime Minister about what they wanted to see in the budget, and it got some pickup, but very little, Andrew. So it really stepped on all of the messaging that they were trying to, as Althea points out, put out there because they think it's important and they agree with the message there.
Yeah, and MPs will be familiar with the kind of thumping they take when they go off message. So when the leader goes off message, it's a particularly probably a moment of payback, perhaps. To reiterate Chantal's point, the playbook for Pierre Poilievre and Jenny Byrne is never, ever apologize for anything. So anytime you're even explaining, it clearly must have ruffled a lot of feathers within the Conservative caucus. I think it was not just the comments here. And again, the problem is not the suggestion that the Prime Minister might have broken the law, because he may well have. The problem is, as a political leader, to make such a statement without any supporting evidence, you just look like a wild man. But I think it also crystallized or became a moment for people who were bothered by his general messaging strategy long before this, this was their kind of break point where they could really press home their advantage, because he'd so clearly overstepped. The problem the Conservatives have is, while there may be a lot of people within the party, particularly within the parliamentary caucus, who might not be terribly keen on this kind of messaging, there's a large section of their base that's really keen on this, who not only want to see Justin Trudeau in jail, but want to see their leader saying improper things, making people like us upset, violating norms, shaking up things, fighting, quote unquote. And that's really who he's playing to. And ultimately, the question before the party and for the leader is, and this is the age-old question for the Conservatives, are you going to get to power just by energizing your own base and ginning out the people who are already supporting you, or do you need to start reaching out to people who aren't with you yet? And part of the reason they're not with you is they've got a lot of doubts about your leader.
Last word to you, Chantal.
And Pierre Poilievre's message since he became leader has been, if you're not with me, you're the enemy. But there's not enough, there are more enemies than there are people in the base that Andrew describes. So at some point, that base is not only more into red meat, if you want to call it that, than the average Canadian, it turns off the average Canadian. And that's a major issue. And increasingly what Conservatives are seeing is it's not the party brand that's the issue, it's the leader. And if that continues into January, it could lead to some interesting results in the bad sense of the word for Pierre Poilievre or party unity.
Yeah.
The Conservatives, the party, are 2 points behind the Liberals in the polls. The leader is 20 points behind Mark Carney.
Last quick word to you, Althea.
I agree with everything Chantal has said. I think it's really interesting to see the kind of reflections that are happening at the moment within the Conservative Party, and the commentary also. Like, is the Conservative Party that was trying to get those 60-plus men that basically voted for Mark Carney last time, was trying to get them back in the fold, this kind of messaging does not appeal to them. And so the questions is, like, what does this Conservative Party stand for? Is this the party that supports institutions, or is this the party that wants to break everything down? And all the concerns about the Trumpism of Pierre Poilievre in the last spring election are now back at the forefront. So it's a really bad week for them.
I'm Rosemary Barton. Thank you so much for watching.